All right, that's enough of that. Cut that a little short. We didn't need all 6.5 minutes. It's Late Night Woo Woo Wednesday. Joined special guest P.A. Thomas, Paranoid America,
There we go.
and our two staples, Hans Dietrich and Julia Kamen. Welcome back, my friends. It's labeled UFO stuff, but everybody here is an occultist at heart, esoteric specialist. So let's dive deep into that. For those that aren't aware, Hans is well versed in the Eastern Orient alchemy and ancient studies and societies. Julia as well into Sumerian remote viewing, looking into tablets in North America. And well, Thomas, you're our homuncologist specialist since, well,
I dabble.
you're
I
Juan's
just
father.
dabble.
Juan claims you're his father. So if you gave birth, I guess it's 2024. If you gave birth to that homunculologist Juan, you're a homuncologist.
I did, and it was a breach, so it wasn't an easy one.
Are you aware of the Dropa stones? Dropa, correct, Hans?
Yeah.
Thomas?
I think I've heard of them on this show.
Yeah, once before, exactly. I remember that now. Going deeper into that, if I recall correctly, I believe what appears to depict like genetic engineering as well as like the cycles of life and stuff like that in some of those stones, correct, Hans? Or
So there's two separate stones. There's what is described in the early accounts of this that come out of the 1930s. The Dropa stones have a spiral hieroglyphic or glyphic writing of sorts. And from what we know of the story, only one of them has this. But they found up to 716 other stone discs in a burial in a cave in the middle of nowhere in far eastern Tibet in a place called Bayan Karula on the Bayan Harshan mountain range. And this area is famous for old petroglyphs. It's famous for other mummies and mummification that have been found there, such as the Tarim mummies, which date back to about 4,000 BC. Dating might be a little off there. And then some of them have ancient relics and manuscripts. And a cultural archaeologist named Chipute, however, I don't actually think this is his name. We'll get into that in a moment. Hold on one second. Gotta let my cat out.
no worries. So the relevance of bringing this all up is if correlating and searching for possible accounts of homuncology or homunculi and the genetic engineering alchemy in the East. And so the Dropa stones are officially extraterrestrial or like demigod created?
This is the question. And so in one of the stories, there's another stone disc that was found that's called the Loladov plate. And this is what depicts what looks like a fertility disc, basically. So it has a squirrel, a Vesica Pisces, a naked humanoid. It has some glyphic writing. There's what looks like spiders or sperm penetrating egg. And then it ends up with chameleon at the end. And so the people that found this thought it was more of a fertility disc.
So possible reptile reference. And when you said humanoid, is it like
it's naked? It looks like it has an elongated head.
Why not? Okay, that's actually the specific question I meant to ask. Was it an elongated skull? But I didn't want to put the idea out there before you said it on your own. So that verifies.
I want to see this. I want to see the Vesica Pisces. Do you have a picture of it?
I do. I don't know if I could.
Show and tell. Show and tell.
Show the goods, man.
And so everything you just described and confirmed is the exact parallel depictions and essentially story in case of the Upart artifacts that Mike with alien carvings has from Mexico and Tula, Mexico's tombs, and it also essentially also mirrors both research of Brian Forrester as well as a
Right.
lot of Sumerian, Babylonian stories, legends. I'm not sure if that's solely originating from Zacharias Kitchen.
You sound a little far away.
You're
Oh, can you hear me better now, or
Yes.
am I on
Yes.
the wrong? Okay, sorry. I'm not sure if the Sumerian, Babylonian, Anunnaki, Nephilim origin comes from the work of solely Zacharias Stitchin, or if other actual academics have since translated that same interpretation, understanding from the original Sumerian tablets.
I think there is an online. It's from Oxford of translations from some of the cylinder seals, and although they don't go as dramatic as Sitchin does, there definitely is some interesting references that are correlated by what Sitchin had translated as well. So
now multiple sources essentially coming up with that translation verification out of the Sumerian tablets and that source of these same origin demigod alien civilization accounts.
I always assumed that Sitchin almost was like a Einstein style, where like the one dude basically popularizes a concept and gets credit for a lot of different people's research. Although that's just an assumption. That's not based on anything.
Well, that could very likely be the case and proven, indirectly, like if it's similar to Einstein's situation where he was head of the patent office and exposed to everybody else's work and essentially the gatekeeper of it all, of what got released, privy to everything and claiming the best and what was allowed as your own sort of thing. And if Stitchin was
what a smart guy.
I did a show. I was doing a show on the Tartarian tablet, and he brought up an interesting point that I didn't know. He said that he heard that Zacharias Sitchin had told Jordan Maxwell that the Anunnaki would like showed up and would tell him information, about the tablets. And that's what he told Jordan Maxwell, because Jordan Maxwell like interviewed him and stuff.
Was it in the context of like channeling them, or was it
right?
Physically
and then I guess Johnny Enoch has like information regarding that about what he said exactly. But I found that to be really interesting.
That is
it's not every day. Like Zacharias Sitchin's like, oh, the Anunnaki, like they were feeding me info.
Okay, let's see if this will work now. Screen works best. Screen. I hope it's just this screen. Share StreamYard.
After you hit share screen or present, then it should give you a few different tab options, Hans, whether it will be like your internet browser tab.
Yeah, I gotcha. Okay.
Windows, or entire screen.
Yeah, we could do the entire screen.
I'm so excited. I want to see the Vesica Pisces. You see the Vesica Pisces in the eye right here behind me? There's so much revealed with that.
Boom, we got her.
Amazing. So this is like halfway through my lecture. This is slide 33. And so as I was discussing.
Did you say 33?
Yeah. Interesting.
Bum, bum, bum.
Dun, 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 dun. And so a lot of the information, that started circulating on the internet pretty much was around this TV series from 2004 called UFO Files with Richard Dolan, David Sereda, Hartwig Hausdorff. Pretty much they tell the story of Chipute in 1938. He goes on an expedition. This is my artist's rendition of what I think the Dropa stones could have looked like, or the stone could have looked like. but they found 716 of these stones. So
from your interpretation, that's based off your experience of actually growing up over there and learning from some of the masters, like the actual history.
So I did my thesis in Bhutan on cultural mysticism and some of the oldest basically temples and zongs there that have some of the oldest Buddhist art that survives through to today. And so I got special access permission to go in 1998 and spend 2 months doing an intensive study for my thesis. So I studied architecture, both the ancient art and architecture versus the modern styles that they're using, which are pretty much the same as what they've been using this whole time. And then Buddhist cultural mysticism, which took me into learning about sorcery and magic and ascended masters and levitating monks and all sorts of the good stuff that you don't hear in a lot of
and
Buddhist
please
practice.
do tell more. We shall temporarily pause the Dropa story and go further into these master monks of levitation, if you don't mind.
Sure.
And I like this concept too, because whenever I bring this up, people roll their eyes like, come on, like take it serious. I'm like, I am taking it serious. I hear people can levitate.
Oh no, like there's several videos out there of different Eastern Orient masters that were filmed by Westerners that got close to them, sort of thing, like in the, I guess, probably late 90s, early 2000s, when like digital recording was like devices were first becoming like available, sort of thing. That like I've seen like 2 or 3 crazy legit stories out there, and then it's like those masters just like disappeared completely and have never like shown themselves on the West or internet again.
Okay, so this is what I was doing in Bhutan. I was basically studying at these zongs. I was given this translator and teacher named Tashila, who took me around to 5 or 6 different zongs and lakongs. These are what they call their monasteries. This one over here on the right is the famous tigers.
Wait, Hans, a zong is a what?
It's a monastery.
Okay.
And a lakong is a little bit larger than a zong. Zong is like a smaller monastery. So
I just thought it was a Z-shaped bong.
it's DZONG. Anyway. And so I was studying some of the old art. It's interesting. Here's a Magoi, this Himalayan or Bhutanese Yeti, basically, or Bigfoot. And then there's a lot of depictions of Shiva in these Buddhist temples as well, which is interesting because most people consider Shiva to be more of a Hindu deity, but he's actually both a Hindu and a Buddhist deity. He lives on Mount Kailash, which is like their most sacred mountain. Anyway, there's a lot behind that as well. And while I was there, I was shown a very interesting room of basically black magic and demons. They don't allow a lot of people into this room. But again, I got some interesting permissions to go in. The walls, the windows, everything is painted black except for the art, which is all this silhouette, usually in white and gold paint. There's depictions of demons eating people, demons having sex with people, sacred sexual acts, Kama Sutra act, things that are considered taboo in a sense in the monasteries. But that's why this room is like specially for all of that. And then here in the middle, there's a depiction of Mount Meru and the gifts from Sirius, and then these ascended Tulku masters of Sirius. And so I learned a lot about Shiva, Milarepa, Siddhartha. They also call Siddhartha Sakyamuni. But the 3 that most interested me were Drakpa Gyaltsen, Mahamad Galgyana, and Gadgad Savara of Sirius. And so while I was there, I ran into this nomadic group of people called the Dropa or the Drokpa, and I started asking questions. Who are these people? They don't speak Tibetan, they don't speak Nepalese. They're about 4 feet tall. They wear these really interesting leather garments and felted wool spider caps that basically help wick water away from their face. And this kind of led me into the query of who are these Drokpa people. And so here in this depiction of Urgen Wanchu, the first Debnag Po, he's basically the Dragon King of Bhutan. He was the first one. In the procession is this character, and here's this Drukpa, and he's carrying the singing bowl, which I have a small one here, right? And in the singing bowl is the Sintamani stone, and that's interesting because these are two items that supposedly came from Sirius about 20,000 years ago. And so this is what the Drukpa people look like. Uh-oh, that picture is all blurred out. But they have this yellowish orange skin, which is kind of rare for the area, but it's very leatherized based on their migration patterns. They are a nomadic tribe of people. And they have blue eyes, which is incredibly rare in this region. And so, and like I said, they're incredibly short as well. My mom is 5'5", 5'6", and so seated, this woman is barely taller than my mom.
Right, the Himalayan giant peoples,
right?
Potentially leftover giant Tartars.
There are some Tibetans that are, close to 7 foot tall, which is really fascinating. I'm sure there's some Denisovian blood in there for sure. So this shows the map of their migration patterns, and then I'll get into these ascended masters here. So the migration pattern goes.
Interject quickly on this. What they say is migration patterns. Potentially, it could also have been inhabitation, not just migration.
Correct.
Through
and this is what I'm essentially getting into. So the Drukpa were essential in establishing Bhutan, the kingdom. They brought this incredibly rare form of Buddhism with them called Nyingmapa Buddhism. As I was describing, it's full of sorcery and magic and levitation and astral projection and Merkaba travel and demons and the whole 9 yards. And then they were also very instrumental in translating Sanskrit into Tibetan and Nepalese. And so they came out of this far eastern Kham Tibet, literally the Bayan Khar Ula and Bayan Harshan mountain range, where the Dropa were found in the caves. They're called the Dropa. In central Tibet, they're called the Zopa. When you get into Bhutan, Nepal, Ladakh, India, they're called the Drokpa, right? Which mean the people of the cloud dragon. Druk is the cloud dragon, so Drukpa is the people of the cloud dragon. And then the further east you go toward basically the Caspian Sea and the Black Sea region, they're called the Brokpa. And they speak this incredibly ancient language, basically called Shina. It predates Sanskrit by about 3,000, 2,000 years. So we're looking 6,000 BC, one of the oldest spoken languages out there, and written languages. And there's 3 dialects of it that stretch across this migration path. There's Brokskat, Manoriskat, and Brokat. And like Brokat is spoken in Bhutan, and there's probably about 300 or 400 people that speak this language. It's kind of on its way out. And so these are the languages of the area, and this gets into the translation of what's on the disc later in the story. And so you have Proto-Chinese and modern Chinese writings on the left. My Dropa stone has Proto-Chinese glyphs on it. This is not a Dropa stone, it's a bi-disc, but this is my example of what they would have looked like. And so this matches the top of that. And then you have Sanskrit, Kham Tibetan, Shina in the lower right, which looks it's very similar to Arabic, Arabian Arabic script. And then you have this spiraling Tibetan script example. So
middle one or top one is Sanskrit. Sorry if you don't mind going back.
The middle one here is Sanskrit in the middle on the right. And so it looks a lot like Hindi does today. And Kham Tibetan is very different from Tibetan, which is the spiraling glyph on the lower left.
Right, like essential pieces of like the origin of linguistics and language in humanity, and it seems every culture, no matter where in the world, that the more ancient ones were truly much more advanced, like languages, both phonetically as well as like informationally and technologically, I guess. Like the claims of angelic language and magic language and all of it, it's the evidence seems to point to it being like true, and just we've devolved or been disconnected.
Interesting. Huh.
The,
So, what is an ascended Tulku master? One might ask. So, this is somebody that's reached basically a state of nirvana or enlightenment within their own lifetime and have mastered the meditational spiritual technology of astral projection, as well as other great feats like anthropomorphically shape-shifting or levitating objects. These all come out of these very interesting stories around ascended masters that I learned about when I was in Bhutan. So basically on the left we have, from Doctor Strange, we have the Ancient One, and she force pushes Stephen Strange's astral body out of his physical body, and in the blink of an eye and, you know, across the dimensions of time and space, she drags him and shows him all the different possibilities of the multiverse, and then brings him back into his body because he's not initiated to be there. And so this initiation is kind of key, because there is some sort of an initiation going on with learning some of the techniques. In Star Wars The Last Jedi, everybody's favorite Star Wars movie, we have Luke basically astral projecting his consciousness in a physical form from Octo to the planet of Crate, where he confronts Kylo Ren, his nephew, one last time. They battle, but he's not really there because he's projecting himself. And then we see him basically become the light body staring into the twin setting suns of Octo. And he doesn't die, he just lands back on the platform from levitating. So here's one of these Ascended Master techniques. And then he wests, he becomes light body. Very, you know, and interestingly, a very Buddhist aspect of dying, and also an Egyptian aspect, because they would follow the sun over the horizon to the west, and were westing, and then they would be reborn in a sense, or brought back.
Can you do you know, or can you give a bit more detail or description of this light body state you speak of, as this is a very common experience that's given in descriptions of people that say that they've experienced the state, or in ancient occult and esoteric writings, also speaking of attaining this state of light, and often the claim of it being a 5D light body consciousness within that description of people writing or experiencing it.
There is a monk in Hindu Buddhist tradition named Padme Baba, and he's known to have left his handprint in a rock, burned his handprint into a rock. And when he was ready to pass, because he was a bodhisattva or an ascended master, basically, a bodhisattva is an ascended master that decides to stay in human form to help others through suffering, basically. They're through compassion and suffering. And so once their time is up, then they can convert into this light body.
So with what you just said, I had this like crazy revelation idea in my mind of the monks that are encased in gold, like they're mummified into this gold state, and that it's like that. Then from that point, they then pass into this physical light body existence, and could be your ghost / angel / what's the description?
Well, you're no longer, you're in corporeal form. You're no longer in a physical. You're no longer in a physical form. And so, are you in this physical dimension, or are you just, you know, are you a holograph coming to this physical dimension? And that, in a sense,
are you an orb in this dimension?
Right. No, exactly.
Light. Exactly. All plasma states gives off light. It's photoelectric, photoluminescent, right? Like ionized state.
Yeah. So, example of light bodies, obviously, the end of Return of the Jedi. I love Star Wars because there's a lot of esoteric knowledge in it, just hidden away. You have Yoda, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Anakin coming back as Force ghosts, but they're still alive. What was Obi-Wan's famous line? If you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine, because he is transformed from physical body to energy. And Yoda has that famous line, "Crude matter, we are not energy beings," and so that definitely is true. And so,
common theme, right, in so many different sci-fi or fictional or fantasy or legend or religious, but most likely reality is that you turn into this light body existence, this plasma, forever time, forever energy, and like physical
look at the Dark Crystal
thing. But in this third dimensional physical volume realm that we call life, existence, Earth here, there's always these horror stories or tales of some sort of like evil demon or possessed soul that tries to reincarnate itself into a physical biological form back into our real third-dimensional physical biological meat suit reality and existence.
Interesting.
From Sauron in Lord of the Rings to the Scorpion King and as you're talking, showing a Star Wars saga and
the Mummy, right? So another example of astral projection is this, what they call the Merkaba or Merkaba form, where you're physically projecting yourself across the dimensions of time and space. And so at the end of the fountain, we kind of see this when Tommy, in Conquistador days in the story, it's a story that takes place over a multitude of time, the present, and then the girlfriend who has cancer is writing a book about the past, spoiler alert, where she's the queen of Spain, and she sends a conquistador to find a sacred relic, basically, the fountain of youth, the tree of life, which he finds. And then he drinks the sap of this and he dies. He goes through a physical death. Then he comes back in this meditative form, floating through the universe toward Xibalba, the underworld of the Mayan belief. But Xibalba is also an interstellar nursery, just to the lower portions of Orion's belt, where there actually is an interstellar nursery there. So it's interesting that the ancients knew that there was a star birth port right there. If you ever watched the IMAX movie Hubble, when they had to go fix the lens on Hubble, it's narrated by Leonardo. And it's really good, but they zoom in on this section of Syria of Orion's belt. Sorry, that's what I was trying to say. Orion's belt, and boom, voila, there's this stellar nursery there. So super fascinating. In the movie The Last Mimsy.
Sorry, just correct me if I'm wrong. The Sirius star system is one of the stars or the stars of Orion's belt?
No, so you have the 3 belt stars of Orion. And if you follow them down toward the horizon, you will find the brightest star that rises in the east, which is Sirius.
Oh, the 3 belt stars point to
They point to it. Yeah, correct. Sirius is part of Canis Major, which is why, strangely, it's called the dog star, because it's the eye of the dog. So you have the Sirius FM logo, and it's the dog with the star, and its eye, dog star, right? A little cheeky one there, guys.
No, or are you aware of the dating of either the Giza Plateau pyramids or the Chinese pyramids or the Mexican, I believe it's Teotihuacan, Mexico City of God ones, that all 3 of the major ones that are aligned to the Orion's belt's 3 stars, and when they date to Sirius being on the horizon.
Right. Well, and that's interesting that it's also during the dog days of summer. So there's all these dog references to the star systems of Sirius, as well as amphibious or water being, mer people, like with the Dogon tribe in Mali, Africa. I mean, these people mapped out in it's like a fertility ritual. They're going back to this, the rotational orbits of Sirius A and Sirius B. And when we discovered that there was a Sirius B, long after we had discovered, the Dogons had known this long before we discovered it through our telescopes. They mapped out
incorporating into their star, like megaliths.
They believe they were put here by their forefathers, which was a species called the Namo, and the Namo came and gave them all of their knowledge of the home star of Sirius. And so,
right, with megaliths that are dated, that their culture has built for several thousands of years at least, right, if not older.
Sure. So, I mean, getting back to astral projection and Merkaba technology. In the last MEMSI, we have this like pseudo Merkaba technology and a Einstein-Rosen bridge that sends MEMSI back to the future with the girl's DNA on it. If you haven't seen the movie, it's a brilliant movie. I suggest everybody should see it. It's a children's movie, but it isn't.
Right.
And then we have a more nuts and bolts version of the Merkaba with the octahedron that Darth Vader sits in, and he can remove his helmet. He can receive telepathic messages from the Emperor and other Sith and Jedi practitioners. He can meditate. The thing closes up. It is the inner shape of the Merkaba. And so Merkaba is a tetrahedron on top of a tetrahedron that basically looks like the Star of David, but in 3D. And one element of it is rotating one direction, and the other element is rotating the other direction. And in rotational spin, it creates a vortices or a shield. And if you look at ancient Suf or Comitian language, you have these three words, Mer, Ka, Ba, right? This is a Hebrew word, but it comes from ancient Comitian or ancient, far back before the dynastic period of Egypt. And so Mer is another word for water, Ka is your body, and Ba is your soul. So it's like a water. It creates some sort of a plasmic water energy in a sense. And so this gets us into the first of these ascended Tulku masters that I learned about in Bhutan. And this guy's name is Drakpa Gyaltsen. Drakpa is another transliteration of Dropa, Drokpa, Brokpa, Drukpa, and Druk Gyalpo. And this guy existed around 1600. He helped establish the Timsing Monastery, which is in the middle of
AD or BC? AD.
AD.
BCE.
More
400
recent.
years ago.
Yeah, correct. And so he was known to go into deep states of meditation where he could levitate himself and his ritual instruments. And in the picture, the Tonka on the right, it's him as an old man, but then it's him in different states of his life. And in the upper corner is him sitting on top of a rainbow, flying out of the top of Mount Meru toward the brightest star that rises in the east. I skipped over the Mount Meru section. But Mount Meru is a spiritual mountain and a physical mountain that stems from the holy city of Shambhala, the core of the earth. And so this is the base chakra. And there are 7 major levels that basically make up.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Is Mount Meru the one that's depicted at the North Pole, surrounded by the 4 islands, or is it a physical mountain?
It is a physical mountain in Tibet. It's near.
In Tibet. Okay, so it's one of the pyramid mountains, correct?
Correct. It is kind of near Kailash, but not. It's further north. It's near Ladakh, but it's also considered a dimensional mountain as well. And so the dimensional mountain you have access to anywhere. And so through all these different discs, they go through the elements, which are basically the chakras. Each one of these levels is occupied by beings that are specific to that level. And when you get to the crown chakra, you basically can then cross a rainbow bridge to the brightest star that rises in the east, which is Sirius. And so this rainbow bridge connects Mount Meru to the star system of Sirius. And this is depicted even over here on the right in one of these tapas as well.
Really? So
this is just like Asgard with the Bifrost. Here's your rainbow.
Literally, Asgard story of WoW, or what's depicted in Marvel as the Asgard.
The Bifrost, quite literally. Yep.
What? Well, if
so
you're
20,000 years ago, a box is found on the summit of Mount Meru, the physical mountain, which is the mountain in the background. Actually, is Mount Meru.
So hold on here, Hans. What about the fact that Samir Osmanovich has documented and proven this light beam that physically comes out of the top of the Pyramid of the Sun and focuses at the sun and moves with the sun throughout the day, physically creating light bridge or beam or rainbow from what
top of
Mount Pyramid into a star.
There are photos of I don't think it's Teotihuacan. I can't remember the name of.
In Mexico,
it's either Mexico or Guatemala, but
both I've seen ones on Teotihuacan as well as Chichen Itza, is I believe the picture you're thinking of with the light beam coming out. And that was also taken by Samir when he was visiting it with this specific type of camera, I believe.
Really? Interesting. So out of Sirius comes these 4 gifts. I guess I could get into that. Or from Sirius 20,000 years ago, found on Mount Meru, the Sintimani stone, the Vajradorje, the singing bowl, which I rang earlier, and the Omani stone. The Sintimani stone is pretty much like the Philosopher's Stone. Whoever possesses
that singing bowl again,
longevity of life is given a great prosperity. The Vajradorje is a 4-sided lightning bolt, which represents Vajrayana Buddhism. It's one of the foundational pillars of that. Buddha's singing bowl, when oscillated, will bring a meditating monk into a higher state of transcendental meditation, a state of enlightenment or nirvana. And by chanting Om Mani Padme Hum from the Omani stone, which also looks a lot like a Dropa stone, interestingly, Om Mani Padme Hum, they will repeat this over and over and over again. And basically it means the jewel in the center of the lotus. And so the lotus is your crown chakra, then the jewel in the center of your lotus is your pineal gland.
Do you place the singing bowl on the Om Mani stone with the Vajradhara on top of the singing bowl with the Sintimani stone on top of
I have no idea.
I would recommend.
Do not know. Sintimani stone has been sought after for eons and ages. It ends up in Da Vinci's Salvator Mundi as the Holy Grail. It's here. In Islam, it's known as the Kaaba stone, and so it sits in the east corner of the Kaaba building in Mecca, the Cube building. The east is where Sirius rises, and Muslims will go there on pilgrimage during the Hajj, which is when Sirius rises in the end of July, early August. And it's interesting that it sits in the silver yoni, and so the yoni is giving birth to this Sirius piece of meteorite on top of a Saturnian symbol, which is the black cube. The great Buddha resides in Shambhala, and he also holds the Sintimani stone, supposedly. But in China, you have the Fu dogs protecting the Luck stone, which is wrapped in the flower of life symbology. And the Fu dogs guard. So here's another dog reference relating to Sirius. The Fu dogs guard the Forbidden City, and so it's kind of an interesting scenario. And it even ends up in Hollywood with the Dreamstone and Wonder Woman 1984. Max Lord wishes to become the stone, and the stone dissolves. He crushes it, and he absorbs the stone, and he would be known in Buddhism as Sintimani Loksavara, the embodiment of the Sintimani stone, which is what this statue on the right represents. And so then that gets us back into the Ascended Tolkien Masters. So here he is rising towards Sirius in meditation, which he was known to levitate and levitate his ritual instruments. And in the Holy of Holies at Tim Sing Monastery, the monks will wear this incredibly heavy chainmail with stakes on the bottom of it. So the Holy of Holy is like it's probably a room that's 20 by 20.
Stakes in the bottom, you say?
It's pitch black. It's in the center of the monastery. It has some of the oldest artwork in there, and it's lit by a couple of butter lamps because they don't want to expose the art to too much light because it will fade. It's so old. And so the monks will go in there. They'll blow out the butter lamps or not, and they will stake themselves into the ground with a chainmail. So when they go into deep meditation, they don't lose themselves in the dimensions of time and space. And so,
and they're connecting a Faraday cage around themselves and grounding it electrically into the building with like that.
Wow.
Seems like Antiquitech right there.
I've never considered that aspect of the Faraday cage, but if you know,
especially if you put on a
projection is the electrical body leaving, then that would make a hell of a lot of sense. Anyway, thank you for
so like look, that one guy in the image that was just there, like that, if that was actual gold chainmail as well, or just the top, you know, and look
I think it was iron. I mean, I'm not entirely sure. It was iron or brass, something that you know would create a Faraday.
Well, exactly that. And then on your crown chakra, on your crown of your head, an actual physical gold crown that I've been speculating and stating for a long time is also some sort of Antiquitech that amplifies, you know, your aura, your conscious projection as like a king or speaking to the god or whatnot, especially from on top of these thrones in these castles and cathedrals. And it seems like it is all actually part of a higher dimensional technology and existence that they still use and utilize, especially in the East.
Yeah, I'm baffled by the construction on this chainmail. It's pretty incredible, actually. It's very, very well instituted. So the second guy I learned about comes out of the Lotus Sutra, and his name is Mahamad Galgyana. The Lotus Sutra is a book of poetry. It's all verses in Buddhism. It's all in Tibetan, or predates Tibetan in some aspects. It was found in 100 BC, so it could be much older than that. And in some of the earlier chapters, you have some really interesting characters. Again, this is all in poetic verse, and so you got to read between the lines on a lot of what is being said, but the story is definitely there for you to see it. Once you see it, you're just like, oh, I totally get what is going on here. So Mahamad Galgyana was a disciple of Sakyamuni, or Siddhartha. In the West, we're told Siddhartha was the first Buddha, but in actuality, he was probably the 1,000th reincarnate, or if not more, of the great Buddha. So take it as it is. Mahamad Galgyana was a disciple of Sakyamuni, and one day he decides to challenge himself and go into a deep state of meditation and try to ascend the different dimensional levels of Mount Meru. And so he wants to hear the great, beautiful voice of the Buddha from the summit. And so he goes into deep meditation and he ascends the mountain. And on the summit, he can hear Buddha's beautiful voice. And he asks Sakyamuni, can you grant me the permission to travel across the Rainbow Bridge to the brightest star that rises in the east and cross the dimensions of time and space using the meditation's little spiritual technology? And it's a technology because scientifically it's a repetition of practice over and over and over again until mastery. And quite literally, that's, in a sense, a technology of sorts, just like fire. He's granted permission. He crosses the Rainbow Bridge, the dimensions of time and space, to Sirius. While he's there, he meets up with a race of giants who think he's a small bug to crush, until one of their bodhisattvas, or their holy men, recognizes him as a disciple of Sakyamuni, asks for forgiveness, and then says, hey, please meditate with us before you return to the earthly realm, which he does. And when he returns, he's granted the title of bodhisattva. And so through compassion, he is staying to help people through suffering, basically. He was known to be able to fly. He also was known to be able to anthropomorphically shapeshift, so he could become beasts, animals, or other beings. And so, interesting character. coming out of the Lotus Sutra. The last guy.
When was that person's time of living?
Not entirely sure. Like I said, the Lotus Sutra comes out of 100 BC or older.
Gotcha.
So
Gotcha.
Stories are older.
Long ago. Not the same guy as the 1600s individual.
No, not. This is much older. I mean,
time of the demigods.
Could be. So the next person that we have is Gadgad-Savara of Sirius, and so this is chapter 23 or chapter 24 in the Lotus Sutra, Gadgad-Savara. And so Manjusri, who is another monk, basically, he's a disciple of Sakyamuni also, so that kind of gives us the time frame of when Gautama Siddhartha was alive, is when some of the storyline was taking place, obviously. And so one day in deep meditation, Manjusri meets a character in the astral plane of his meditation. And this character announces himself as Gadgad-Savara. And to prove his existence, he leaves 7 jeweled lotus flowers for Manjusri. And Manjusri comes out of his meditation. He's baffled. And he asks Sakyamuni, who is Gadgad-Savara? And how is he able to come to me in my meditation? And Sakyamuni says, well, Gadgad-Savara is a sage. He's a bodhisattva from the brightest star that rises in the east, which is Sirius. And he has mastered the ancient meditational spiritual technology of astral projection. And so Manjusri then asks, how can I learn this technique? And this is where the initiation comes in with the Ancient One from Dr. Strange, and Dr. Strange not being initiated. Sakyamuni says, well, you're not initiated yet for that type of meditational technology. However, you can be guided by somebody who is a practitioner who will guide you into an astral projection or astral plane experience. And so Manjusri does this, and he meets again with Gadgad-Savara on the astral plane. And he asks him, do you have the ability to visit us here on Earth, on our physical plane, in your physical form? And Gadgad-Savara says yes, and he accepts the challenge. And then it is described that, accompanied by hundreds of thousands of musical instruments, the sounds of, he climbs atop a tall tower, a flying palace of 7 layers. So here's your Mount Meru technology, in a sense. A flying palace, so it's a Vimana tech of sorts, and accompanied by the sounds of hundreds of thousands of musical instruments, he departs and crosses the dimensions of time and space and arrives at Earth.
The roar of a jet engine or something
or a rocket engine, repulsor lifts, something like that. A cacophony of noise. I mean, what would hundreds of thousands of musical instruments sound like? And so this depiction in the background here of Gadgad-Savara shows that he's surrounded by all these musical instruments. And this is kind of, their poetic description of what this would be. And so he then descends from the tall palace, and he meets with Sakyamuni and Manjusri, and he blesses them. And he's described as being, golden skinned and glowing. So he has this glowing golden skin, and his eyes are blue within blue, kind of like what, we find in Dune almost, the blue within blue eyes of the people of Arrakis or Dune, basically. Yeah.
Or some description of angels.
Yeah. So this is a really, interesting thing, because in the Dropa story, the Dropa and the Drokpa are both described with having blue eyes and this orangish glowing skin. And so here we have this character from Sirius looking the same way. He then blesses Earth. He calls it a beautiful place, unlike the Saha or wasteland that he comes from. The world that he comes from was devastated by war and was left as mud, rock, filth, and mountains. And this is interesting because this also comes up in the Dropa storyline, because there was a war in Sirius about 22,000 years ago or further back between the civilizations of Sirius, who were starting to become type 2 civilizations and skirting across, their little solar system, in a sense, and discovering other planetoids and other beings. And eventually they decide to band together. their scientists and create generational arcs or generational ships to send out and find other planets in nearby star systems that they can then either terraform or colonize, in a sense. And so this gets into the Dropa story. But here we have, Gadgad Savara. And so he then bids Manjusri and Sakyamuni goodbye. He climbs back atop the tall tower of 7 layers, the flying palace. And again, accompanied by the sounds of 100,000 musical instruments, he traverses across the dimensions of time and space. And so this is the most fascinating, astral projection story ever, because not only is this guy astral projecting from Sirius and meeting with, practitioners here, but he has the ability through technology to traverse, 8-9 light years in a blink of an eye and visit in the flesh. And so here is a being from Sirius who's described like a Dropa. So anyway, that's kind of the background of the esoteric aspects of Buddhist cultural mysticism and ascended Tolku masters. So yeah, who's next?
Wait, Vesica Pisces. Where's the Vesica Pisces?
Oh yeah. Okay, so I didn't get into that, did I? So we can go through. I'll just quickly go through this. Gadgad Savara's ship is very much similar to Dryden Voss's tower ship in Solo: A Star Wars Story. It's got 7 layers and has a repulsor lift sound that sounds like musical instruments. Anyway, this gets into the Dropa lore and legends. These caves are very near to the Shangdui culture and the Terracotta Army, as well as the Chinese pyramids, as we discussed with Shem on the last show I was on. And so these are all in a very similar region. They're all within 100 kilometers of each other, which is quite a distance, but it really isn't. These are some of the oldest caves in the world. Some of them are found in this region. This one on the left is 14,000 years old. It's called one of the Sky Caves of Mustang, Nepal, and it held ancient Buddhist script and art, and it's super old. And it sits on this cliffside, which makes it look like the water level possibly was up at this elevation, because how else do you get into these things? It's just mind-blowing. I mean, these are sitting way, way up on a cliffside.
Right. I suspect a similar case archaeology and probably the same civilization potentially of pre-cataclysm in the Grand Canyon pyramid complex systems and whatnot, and that they most likely had the canyons dammed up at other areas, which raised it into like a Venice like pyramid super city of water and travel, and making it actually habitable in those places, habitable. Just
so in one of the caves,
it's crazy.
In one of the caves, the walls were clean cut and hewn to the bedrock, kind of like this cave in the middle of nowhere at Napa Iglesia in the Sacred Valley of Peru. I've been to this cave. It's quite a hike to get to it, and there's no electricity around here. So who cut this? How are they cutting it? This is a hard andesite. It's like 7 on the Mohs scale. So it would.
And the purpose behind putting so much work in such a remote location into making what appears to be a false door, like
it's not perfect. I'll give it that. There are some 90-degree angles in it, but it's not a perfect situation. But it's so well made, and I mean, you see so much of this around there that it's interesting that in the 1930s story that this cave that they find the Dropa in resembles this. And so it's very similar also to the Barbara caves in Bihar, India, which have tolerances that are unbelievable, and they don't know how the Indians cut these either, with these perfectly half-circle dome ceilings. It's quite a mystery. On one of the walls is petroglyphs showing the sun, the moon, the star system of Canis Major with Sirius, the brightest star, and a star path going to a mountain range, which they considered would be the local mountains.
And those are the only stars, the constellation the caves are? It just keeps referencing Sirius.
Yeah. And so, but Sirius from our point of view. Okay, so it's like, how long were these people here staring back at, where they were from? after they crashed. So this is kind of a depiction of the Comp burial. They discovered that there were row upon row of these beings that were probably about 4 foot, 3'5" to 4 foot tall. They had slightly elongated heads, although in the TV show, Hartwig Hausdorff says they were large and clumsy, which I always laugh about. And some of them were skeletal, some of them were mummified. The mummified the mummified bodies had this orangish skin and the remains of blue eyes, very similar to the Tara mummies, and this auburn hair as well. And so the Tara mummies also had this like orangish skin and the remnants of blue eyes.
So the picture of the cave you have up right now, that's that cave is dated to 14,000.
So this is where the story gets interesting. Okay. So at the back of the cave, they find a singular disc with hieroglyphic writing in a spiral, spiraling out from the center to the outer ring. And in the back of the cave, and this is kind of a depiction of a Chinese burial that was found, where you have these megalithic blocks, and this is in a cave, basically, where hundreds of these bidiscs or hundreds of these Dropa stones were found. There were 716 found in total. And so Chipute and his team, hauled out as much as they could. They went back to the Beijing Academy of Sciences to do further tests, try and decipher the glyphs, so on and so forth. One of the discs makes
I'm willing to bet that those would probably be recovered from like most tombs of all of the pyramids in China.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. No, the bidiscs are found all over the place, but they don't really know what their representation is. And so it's interesting that we have this Dropa stone very similar to the bidisc.
You've got the bidisc with you right there, and so they're everywhere.
This is an old one. This is made out of red jade. And so it's got, this proto-Chinese glyphic writing on it. I'm not entirely sure what it says. Could be a family history. It could be a spell, it's unknown. I should
probably look into that.
Yeah, why do there's poltergeists in my house? No, there's blood in the toilet. That's peculiar. So they sent one of the discs to Russia in the mid 60s or early 60s. This deck is actually kind of jumping around out of order here, but they discovered that the disc that was arrived in the Soviet Union or Russia was jadeite with cobalt and mercury infusion. So jadeite is not jade. Jadeite is more of a granite, and it's infused with cobalt and mercury, and this is often how jadeite is found. And so they decided to do quantum oscillation on it to find out if it had a frequency or a pulse, which it did, and they discovered that it had been probably exposed to high intense voltage of electricity at some point, because as we know in the last episode we were talking about piezoelectric effect. If granite is put under pressure, it creates a piezoelectric effect, which the cobalt and the mercury infusion would harness like a battery. And so the question is, what kind of electrical source were these around? And are these part of their ship? So we're told by this UFO 2004 UFO files that this story came out of Das Vegetarian Universe, Belgian UFO Bulletin, and Sputnik magazine, all from 1962, and also is found in Chariots of the Gods. Okay, I tracked down every possible imaginable magazine that you could think of from this era from Germany, and I could not find Sputnik magazine from Russia from 1962 that had this article in it. They have a vast archive online of Sputnik magazine. I could not find the Belgian UFO Bulletin from 1962 either. It's almost as if it doesn't exist. There's no article, there's no publication of it. And Das Vegetarische Universum, or the Vegetarian Universe, I don't think this magazine even exists, or this publication, because I've not been able to find a single publication or article from a single publication, or a logo or anything of this anywhere. And I read Chariots of the Gods, and the Dropa story isn't in there either. And so the question is, how little research did these three gentlemen on this TV show actually do? And so I was challenged to actually start researching deeper into this, which I did. And I tracked down a 1964 German UFO bulletin called UFO Nachrichten. It was a periodical, and in number 54, I believe that's what this is, no, it's number 95, sorry, is this article about literally the Chipute story that everybody is repeating in nauseam. Okay. However, in the video online, it says that the Dropa met up with the Han Chinese. Well, there is no tribe of people in China called the Han, H-A-M. There is a Tibetan group of people in that exact region called the Kham. And in this German, I've had this translated, in this German story, basically, a periodical talking about the Dropa, they mention the Kham Rase, which are the Kham people. And so basically, this tells the story of another professor in the 1950s, so it would have been 1952. No, 1948. No, 1952 or 58. So 20 years later, yep, from 1938. Professor Sung Nui, which I don't think that's his name either, because of transliteration, and I'll get into that in a minute. Sung Nui basically translates what's on the disc. And this is where your question comes in: is the disc extraterrestrial? And so the disc translates like this: the Dropa came down from the clouds in their wing gliders 10 times before the sunset. The local men, women, and children hid in the caves and eventually learned this time the Dropa came with peaceful intentions. This is not the story of an extraterrestrial race. This is the story of the people observing the crash. And they came down in their winged gliders, which would suggest escape vehicles or exploration vehicles. And maybe the mothership crashed somewhere else. We don't entirely know. That part of the story is unknown.
Potential settler survivor interference.
Correct. And so the question is, why did they crash? And when did they crash? In the story, it says that Sung Nui carbon dated the stone, which you can't carbon date stone. So this is kind of where the story is a little weird. It's 11,000 or 10,000 BC to basically 12,000 years ago. And so the thought is that these people crashed here 12,000 years ago, but not necessarily. The stone could be from a 12,000 year ago period. And
right
altered later.
Catastrophe.
Yeah, which is fascinating. So what happened to cause the crash? I then stumbled across a June 1967 Sputnik magazine. And this is where I believe the Sputnik 1962 article came from. And the version I got is all in French. I had it translated as well. It's quite a long article called Des Visiteurs du Cosmos, or the Cosmic Visitors. And it's written by this Vyacheslav Syzev, and he's the scientist that was doing harmonic oscillation tests and mineral tests on the disks in the Soviet Union. And so in this, it reads almost exactly the same, except in the Sputnik version, it says the Han Chinese. And so this is why I start thinking there's a transliteration issue going on here, because you have a Chinese story translated in German, German to English, German to Russian, Russian to French, French to English. All these languages have different syntax. And so, for instance, the translation in Sputnik comes to the Dropa came down from the clouds in their craft. Well, craft could be singular or it could be multiple. And 10 times before sunset, the local men, women, and children hid in the caves and eventually learned this time the Dropas came with peaceful intentions. And this time is actually in both of the translations. And it signals to me that they had come once before, and they were known amongst whoever translated this. And this is why I think that possibly the language on the disc is this Shina or Kham Tibetan language that would have been able to have been translated by this professor at the Chinese Academy of Sciences, because without a cipher, how is he translating an alien language? He has no cipher. He has no idea what he's translating. And so they go through transliteration. Basically, Dropa becomes Drokpa, Han Chinese become the Kham Tibetans, Chipute becomes Shifute, or teacher. Shifute is an actual title and a surname, and Te comes from Teochew and is a transliteration of a Chinese surname. And so transliteration, just scratching under the surface, would tell you that if you're telling everybody that the story is fake because these people don't exist, which is what comes out of the video, you're not looking deep enough. And so this is where Shifute and Chipute kind of came around. And then Sung Un Nui would be Tsiung Nguyen, which is a How Chinese Vietnamese name because there were a lot of Vietnamese in China in the 1930s and 1940s and 1950s. The Beijing Academy of Sciences, basically, what we were told doesn't exist. Well, after 1949, it didn't. It was re-established as the Chinese Academy of Sciences in Beijing. And so there's all these mysteries. And so this gets into the second book that is about the Dropa, and this is called The Sun Gods in Exile. And this is where Julie wanted to see the disc that she probably stepped out for a minute.
What you're documenting seems to be one heck of almost a cover-up or like intentional government or institutional prevention of this story and the information really getting out there or being accessible.
Yep.
And so this is one of the 2 official Dropa stones, correct?
Yes. So Sun Gods in Exile was claimed to be a hoax by the author in 1989, I believe, in 40 and Times. This is what they tell us on this 2004 documentary TV show. And everybody claims that the book is fake because there are certain characters in the book that couldn't possibly exist. There's certain situations that couldn't exist. There's a dress code in the book that couldn't exist. And it goes on and on and on, why this book is, totally a hoax. But having read it and own it, there is so much cultural overlap in this book that would not have been known by the author, the original author of the book from the 1940s when he had his expedition into Tibet, or by the publisher that published his book in the 1970s, because Tibet and Bhutan especially were incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to get into during these time periods. I mean, quite literally. And so if you had not immersed yourself in this culture, this religion, these cultural practices and all of this, then basically the stuff in the book would not make sense to you. But having been to Bhutan and been in Tibet and been in Nepal and seen a lot of the culture that's there today, it's like, these people, again, did not research very deep into this book. Yeah, there's some elements of the book that are, hyper-sensualized, like this, for instance. This is a depiction of the Lalidov plate. So it starts with this sun disk in the middle, or it's a flower. Then there's the squirrel creature. There's the glyphic writing. There's the yoni. There's more glyphic writing, which looks a lot like Proto-Chinese. There's the naked humanoid. There's these sperm and egg or octopus or spider creatures. And then there's this chameleon or lizard. And this was bought off of a Zopa or Dropa nomad in Mussoorie, India, in the beginning of the book Sun Gods in Exile. And so this character, Carl Robin Evans, who everybody calls Carol Robin Evans, because his name is very Germanic in spelling, decides to go discover who the Dropa people are. So the only pictures in the book are what's on the back cover, inside back cover, and inside front cover, which is a depiction of a drawing of the Dropa headmaster and his wife. People don't believe that this is a dress code of this region and that this could even exist. And then the other one is of the Lalidov plate, and it clearly says that it's a reproduction of the description of the Lalidov plate, because obviously there wouldn't be photos of it from the 1940s. And so this is, again, it looks like
amazing. And just the amount of parallels of the symbols and what's depicted in that stone right there, as well as what I've seen in both the Crespi collection as well as Mike's in Alien Carvings, I believe. Yeah. Mexico artifacts, as well as some of Klaus Donna's collection as well, and they all
Klaus Donna has a disc that has a hole in the center of it, and it's a fertility disc on one side and the other, and I believe it's made out of schist, which is similar to that disc in Egypt, the schist disc, which is it's slate, but it's incredibly brittle. It's hard to work. So anyway, this is
A whole set of that was from Ecuador, I believe, close to where the Father Crespi collection came from, the same area.
So yeah, so this is the yoni plate they thought was a fertility disc. In the story, this is one of 12 discs, and they're used kind of like a solid state hard drive and a device to record the passage of time and the travels of the ship while they're going through hyperspace, because they don't have FTL travel. So it would take them several, generations, hence generational sleeper ship, to get here from Sirius. In the story, they come 12,000 years ago, basically. I'll give you the rundown of the story. So Evans ends up passing by this porter on the trail that whips by him carrying about 5 times his weight, and in the freezing cold. And people say, oh, this is impossible. People can't move that fast and pass people on the trail, and they certainly wouldn't be carrying 5 times their weight. He then came across a naked yogi meditating in the snow. Again, people are like, yeah, this is impossible. We got to freeze to death. But here's a Nepalese Sherpa. These guys usually are barefoot. This guy actually has shoes, and they're chain smoking. And he's carrying a refrigerator to the top of a mountain, basically to a village. And the refrigerator is most likely full of Coca-Cola and beer. And so, he weighs 150 pounds, and that box and refrigerator and beer weighs 500 to 600 pounds. So yeah, and these guys will pass trekkers
high altitudes too. Like, that's insane.
Oh, yeah. They'll fly by you on the trail, and you're out of breath, and you're just like, what the hell? And then we have Wim Hof, who will meditate on a glacier for hours on end. And so, of course, these are feats that humanity can do. But yeah, it goes into a crazy story. So he goes through Tibet. He hires porters and guys to take him to Calm Tibet. They leave him, and he has to meet the headmasters and the people of the village, and basically tells them that he's here to learn who they are. And he's an anthropologist, and he wants to study them, basically. And so Champala, or Hupala, which is his name in the book, I think it's Champala, which is more of a traditional Tibetan name. And Vijla is Yishila, which is more of a Tibetan name for his wife. As we're told, that they couldn't possibly be wearing these outfits. Well, these are the outfits of Tibetan men's clothing and women's clothing during this time period. And so the women would put braid their hair up into these incredibly ornate and decorative, but strange, bizarre, satellite hats. And it's like, what is that all about? And both the men and women would wear these models.
And there's so much metal and foil and like circuitry into them, and then
the
crystals they put in. I swear that is another major piece of ancient royal antiquity.
Right here in color. And so this is a Calm Tibetan / Mongolian costume. And it's almost identical to what George Lucas threw in for Princess Amidala or Queen Amidala in the Phantom Menace. She's wearing literally something that's inspired by the same outfit. So again, interesting that we find these weird.
Reminds me of the Lady Dale jade too, like with
absolutely, Julia, 100%. And she was found in Spain, I believe, as well as now there's coins with depicting her that have been found in North America as well. That's not well known. But yeah, she was all over, but supposed pre-Diluvian queen or figurehead.
Huh. So anyway, yeah, so Evans learns of the history of, he's given a translator, and her name's Lauren. And she teaches him Dropa language, or the Shina, basically, which, like Shina, is a gendered language. So there's a male and a female tongue, similar to Spanish or Thai. And it has a hierarchy. So there's a child's tongue, there's a commoner's tongue, and there's a royal family tongue. And this is identical to the Shina language as well. And so he learns this language from his crude Tibetan English and sign language. And eventually, she introduces him to a nobleman and one of the religious leaders. His name is Lorgan Law. Law is what they put on as like a surname or whatever for their names. And he tells the history of the Dropa people and how there was this great war in Sirius. They built these generational sleeper ships. They came here basically 12,000 years ago, found Earth, sent out an exploration vehicle to collect samples of water, minerals, water, soil, plants, air, and animals. And while on the planet, they were attacked by primitive humans. They killed some of the humans. Some of the young soldiers had their way with some of the young human women, and some of the wounded soldiers decided to stay on Earth. And so they returned to Sirius generations later, and the scientists of Sirius start to realize that the humans are genetic cousins of the Dropa. And so there could be a Dropa-human hybrid race living on the planet because the young soldiers were having sex with the humans. And so they decide to return to Earth. They get in their faster generational sleeper ship, and they arrive at Earth at around 1000 AD. This is the people that I think were found in the cave, because their decomposition rate would make more sense, as would the story that the comm have written on the discs. And so they end up staying, waiting and waiting, hoping for a. I did leave out a huge part. When they returned in 1000 AD, their ship started malfunctioning, and it started decaying in orbit. They realized that they were, having problems, and so the young male soldiers rebelled against the matriarchy, because the Dropa people are a matriarchy, and all the female pilots and navigators, and commandeered the ship, and then realized as well that there was no hope. They couldn't regain control of the ship. And so in a last-ditch effort, they send one of their exploration vehicles back towards Sirius in hopes of being rescued. And so around 2000 or 1908, we have the Tunguska event. And around this time, something came into the Earth's orbit that the Dropa were watching, basically. And then we had this huge Tunguska event. And it's an interesting story.
Right, very fascinating, the amount of parallels between it, the Old Testament. Is it the one segment of them coming down and being giants and mating with the people?
Oh, the Nephilim, the giant mating with the beautiful women of Earth. Yeah, exactly.
Right, as well as a lot of what's depicted in all of Mike's parts from artifacts from Mexico. Right. And
so we're told that their main ship, basically, which he's taken on board, and he's shown all this technology that doesn't exist in the 1940s and didn't exist in the 1970s. And so here's another aspect of the story where we're being told about fiber optic technology, flat screen curved monitors with fingertip sets, basically, and then solid state hard drives, basically. And so the remainder of their cigar shaped ship that was about 1 kilometer in length was the central monastery of the village, basically. And so the skeptics are like, oh, there's no way there's 1 kilometer in length monastery. However, in this exact same region of Kham Tibet, there is a 1.2 kilometer long Shangri-La monastery. And in the same area of eastern Kham Tibet are these incredibly weird, like almost star fort towers that I'd like to find out if anybody's actually done a land scat of them to see if they are in any specific positioning. But the question is, what were these towers for, and why were they built so tall out of like a shale bricking, basically? Anyway, so
that, like, just so much. So one thing that I have to ask and wonder if this story is the actual case, the amount of time that it would take for that one ship to go back to Sirius, and then the next return rescue party, or the next group of that civilization returning, how long that would take.
And 6,000 years in one direction.
So we still got 5,000 to go. Oh no, 9,000 to go potentially.
Well, and this is where the story kind of gets weird, because flash forward to 2017, and on Haleakala on Maui, they discover this object, interstellar object, they're calling it basically, come through the orbit of Earth toward perihelion with the sun. It slows down, changes course corrects, changes direction, and then speeds up to slingshot around the sun. And this is Oumuamua, the scout. And Oumuamua is about 1 kilometer in length. It's spinning end over end, creating an artificial gravity, and it looks like a cigar ship. And so the question is this a Dropa or Sirius civilization generational ship coming through the region to check up on, the ET? Who knows?
Right? How soon are the demigod alien star people going to be back? Or are they back now?
That's my deep dive, short lecture on the esoteric dive into
that was amazing.
Cultural mysticism, ascended Tolkien masters, the Dropa connection, and they're all related to Sirius, which is the most fascinating of it all. Is that Sirius keeps coming up in the Buddhist storyline, but you don't ever really hear about it in modern day Buddhist practice because they're not practicing this Nyingma Buddhism, and so they're not really talking about it, and so it becomes lore and legend. And that's kind of why the title of my book was Dropa: Lore and Legends, or Legends and Lore, because it's gone into that realm basically. And so, are these people real? Well, I mean, there is a group of people in this area called the Dropa. In the 1940s and the 1970s, you would not have known of these people or their name. Unless you were in some of these remote regions, again, like Bhutan or Ladakh or Kashmir. This is long before. This was, some of this is on the Silk Road, but this is long before the hippie trail or any of that. And so, yeah, it's really interesting that you have these incredible overlaps that just they defy explanation unless somebody had actually been there and witnessed this. So yeah,
I feel you. And also like the stories of ancient India and what the parallels with what you've just shown. It's next level.
Yeah, there's a ton of cultural overlap. I'm sure there's even Tartarian overlap through the Kham regions of Tibet as well.
Well, lots of the photos of like the or actually can put that back up if you. Oh, no, you closed it. Never mind. To the headgear, the different like.
Oh, I can go back.
Hats, crowns, what they were wearing and the royals were wearing and stuff, and that's a lot of the the Tartarian people pictures are similarly dressed, and it's crazy.
Hold on, it's not grabbing my window. What just happened? Why you do? Oh, that's why.
The grounding, the chainmail and whatnot, and the pyramidal cone hats that the monks wear while meditating in these palaces or different.
I mean, even this headgear that these women are wearing looks like some sort of antiquitech. It's bizarre.
Right. There's more to it. Yeah, there we go. Like, look at that. It's wild.
Well, shucky darn, what's going on here? So yeah, that's like the same headdress almost.
Like, or the similarities to the captain of a sailor's hat, or like, was it the Imperial French or British or some sea navy that was wearing hats like that and stuff too, right?
Right, but this is all open through here. So it's like a wood bow and arrow kind of frame.
A lot of giants were buried with this thing above its head.
Yes.
It's straight right here. Doesn't that remind you of that? Like,
you know exactly what you're speaking of. And yes, Julia, I think you're absolutely onto something with that. The Burroughs Cave depictions, all specifically have in-depth drawings of that?
I mean, just bizarre. It's like, what on earth is going on here? And so it's like coral and turquoise are all the stones. And then there's metal and prayers and just what these are all.
And how much wire, gold, silver, copper that's intertwined as well into it.
Oh, her earrings are probably solid gold, which is very similar to Nepal. They'll wear their wealth on them, and they just have these huge golden earrings all the time. But yeah, these are kind of bizarre.
Wild. And the similarities to some of like North American, South American, and even African like community chiefs, kings, monarchs, and priests, nobility, all wearing similar structured headpieces and connecting clothing.
Right.
Is it psychic technology?
And then you have the Faraday cage, right?
Wait, you're saying the metal thing around him's like a Faraday cage?
Well,
yeah,
I mean,
well, if
he takes it into the ground when he meditates, so he doesn't his electrical, astral body doesn't leave because he's not initiated, and so he doesn't want to get lost in time and space, physically or spiritually.
Also, I envision like a ball lightning or just like a plasma orb field around you, and then that metal Faraday cage insulation or wiring to like protect you, ground you from the energy of the massive field of the orb or interdimensional Merkaba or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, most likely.
It's interesting of like things that they use as talisman to ground you, to hold you here, like that you're supposed to take it out and have like your process when you leave your body, you have that talisman of that thing that connects you here physically.
As well as you being like tied down, netted down, and preventive of any potential other consciousness body snatchers or entities possessing that body or body while your consciousness is separated too, right? Could be another aspect of it.
I wonder if anybody like did any pranks, like, haha, just kidding. I was prepared for that. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Oh, like if anybody says the theory of astral traps. Oh God, that's so funny.
You never know. But that Uman I said that, butchered that name, but what you have up there, 100%, that is the definition of a cigar-shaped intergalactic or from one solar,
literally. An asteroid flung it through space. But the fact that Astronomy Magazine here says the first known cosmic tourist was likely ejected from a system with 2 parent stars. Gee, what system has 2 parent stars? Oh, serious.
A lot of stars have
a lot do, but
yeah, like most, if not all.
In the context of what we've been discussing, it's like, huh?
Do they currently claim that they don't know where it came from, yet they're showing us the exact model of how it traveled and where it came from and where it's going?
Right. Yeah.
But this really triggers me. I don't know. I mean, I mentioned it on New Year's, but any data that I got from that star in particular was all false. All of it. Every single one. Everything. So I was like, is like a code for like certain things? I don't know.
Be initiated in or have your local Sherpa translator.
Well, that's interesting because when Alice Bailey and Alexandria Neal and Madame Blavatsky, and even Nicholas Roerich, when they were all looking for the Sintamani stone and the entrance to Shambhala, and some of this ancient antiquitech at the turn of the last century, they all had interesting translators. So Madame Blavatsky touted around with this guy named Jual Kuhl, who was he was a monk, and he was basically teaching her all of this incredible esoteric knowledge about the White Brotherhood and Shambhala, the entrances to getting into the inner earth, the Sintamani stone, and all this really interesting stuff. And then her predecessor, Alice Bailey, ended up channeling Jual Kuhl and wrote like all these books of him channeling all this esoteric knowledge to her. And Alexandria Neal, she was from Austria or somewhere, she had her guide Yandin, who was this other monk that she touted around with. And Nicholas Roerich also, he would go through Tibet and Nepal and India, and all he wanted to know was, where's the Sintamani stone? How can I find the entrance to Shambhala? And just really interesting people.
Also, Nikola Tesla, I believe, for many years had an Indian, like from East India, yogi or master with him and teacher for a long period of time.
I would just think, like, how we were talking about how they were blaming, like, the that they were tracing the Oh My God particle or the Amaterasu particle, like, oh, it's coming from the void in Sagittarius, like where
Right?
I feel like Sirius becomes this like, oh yeah, like everyone look over here, like look over there, yeah, it connects with that. That's the spot, like yeah, that's what it is.
Or is that just them sending information back and forth to each other as they're still in contact or potentially here right now? If there's some sort of signal going back and forth.
You always hear too of like, oh, reptilians are from Sirius. They're from Sirius, right? You hear that a lot. Or, God, it's always the same ones. But there was like this stone that was found in New Mexico that is like a story stone, and it shows like these alligators with these tails, but it actually says it's from Pleiades, that they came from Pleiades.
Right. That there's a few different origin stories of star people and slash demigods slash like societal writer, like Thoth, for instance, and Ra, and like ancient Egypt, and pretty much everywhere around the world, telling these similar stories. And but it's just, it's crazy to what to make of it.
Well, thank you, Hans. I still didn't see the Vesica Pisces, man.
Yeah, I showed it to you.
For like the 3 minutes you actually stepped away.
That was that
right
second disc. You were looking at it for a while. It's just, it's like a yoni. It's like a yoni at the top of the screen.
Oh, the one with the squirrel?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like, that's a UFO. And it's like, no, that's a yoni. It's a Vesica Pisces. Yeah. So.
Do we still have Thomas, or has Thomas gone to sleep? Oh my goodness. Amazing.
He is back.
I'm just cranking away in Photoshop here, so instead of looking like I'm totally distracted,
I didn't mean to go on so long. I just all of a sudden we're like,
question though is, were you able to come up with, or are you able to quickly generate a Wow Wednesday, what is it, a seductive owl pineapple?
Wait, a seductive owl?
Well, since we started getting into what pineapples are symbolically representing code
exactly
for.
Our symbology of the day's show, pineapple.
I was doing weird like pyramid eyeball things, but we can do some owls.
Even better. No, that is even better.
Thomas, you said you started making. You said you started making this today because you were diving down some dark topics. What topic was it? Because I have been diving down some darkness this week. And then
So
started having to read like Gospel of Thomas stuff to like
are
balance
we
it out.
streaming to YouTube right now?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay,
Sir.
well, one of them is a Thrill Oxide playset, and I was just looking to see. I don't want to say the real thing because you'll
Okay.
just immediately get a little slap
Fair
on the
enough
wrist,
and
but-
appreciated. Would we be able to finish off the show with the generation?
Yeah, without me I just pop in out of nowhere and drop a 4-second bomb, and then all the monetization just disappears immediately.
But you're better than that because you yourself could then. Why aren't you using this on your own channel? Anywho, no worries. But the idea of an owl that has a pineapple, right? And that
Pineapple?
the seductiveness because pineapple, the symbology the symbol represents swingers.
Oh,
swinger
that's right. Yeah, the
right?
swinger
It's
lifestyle.
a seductive owl pineapple
one.
AI creature that is trying to seduce you into the pyramid for the Illuminati orgy sexual ritual, right? Like
We can do that. Yeah, that makes sense.
There you go, right?
With
Sorry,
Sesame
go.
Street character.
Exactly. And it's a wow. That is the definition of a wow. The official wow. A seductive owl, pineapple.
You got to say like Owen Wilson. Wow.
I guess it might have to be a cyclops or a 3-eye because it's Illuminati.
I got my screen up if you want to do a couple owls on the fly here.
Yes.
And Julia, you were asking about something earlier before we started. If you want to generate something.
Oh yeah. I need a big a giant inside of a mountain.
Oh, I've actually. Oh, I've got one of those. Let's just see. I had a very specific one the other day that was looking great, and it had like a dude's face, but it was like the mountainside, like formed a face with like a beard and stuff.
Oh, that's epic.
I'll see if I can find it.
That's just such an intense eye.
Where can I buy one?
ParanoidAmerican.com, 15% off. All eyeballs and
all day, every day, and pyramids.
Okay, here's the one that I was working on the other day. That one is kind of.
That's pretty cool.
I like
how it was going. I like the direction. This one might need a little bit of work. It already looks like it's a little bit wonky. I mean, technically it's a giant. I mean,
we're working on nightmares to finish it off.
But also it looks like a terrifying like Japanese manga horror story or something in the bottom left there.
It's like no theater.
On the bottom right.
Kabuki no theater character. You just need the red dots on the cheek.
Apparently this one is from Giant Plogaphy.
Whoa.
That's the watermark. So sorry for using your artwork, Giant Plogaphy. So, yeah, I mean, it could use a little bit more crafting. We can maybe add like a human into the negative prompt,
or a wow.
Let's do the well. Well, I was doing a pineapple owl. That's all I was typing before, and maybe I'll throw in like a award-winning
pineapple owl.
What's that?
Seductive owl pineapple.
You just said that we were streaming live on YouTube, and I just want to let you know if you start typing words like seductive into AI and hitting generate, you might not get what you're expecting.
Okay, I
guess I should do it like that first, so that we can make sure it is YouTube and world friendly, and not going to.
Yeah, give me a second to see. Just make sure it's all kosher.
It's like there's yet to be an AI seductive level. Just all or nothing.
I'll switch to a faster model too. That'll generate them a little bit snappier. Oh, these are looking great though, man. They're looking so good, even though they take a little while. I think they're looking. We were talking about pineapple owls before. It's got another 30 seconds to cook. How can anyone not? I think that should be the new litmus test to determine if you're like a psychopath or not. You just show someone a pineapple owl, and if they don't have any response, then they're probably like torturing animals in the shed.
They're not part of the party. They're psychopaths in the shed or the van down by the river. Hopefully not.
Come on.
Oh, it's so cute.
Right?
It's like, yeah.
Who doesn't want to party with a wow?
Look at that.
The
All right. Now take me back off.
Is watching.
We'll add the word seductive and see what the hell happens. He's probably have boobs for eyes. What's gonna happen? I already know exactly what's gonna happen.
Amazing. World first wow right here.
Hey, better be careful, dude. We're playing with fire now. Oh, all right, you're gonna risk it. Anything could happen. Oh, we're playing Russian roulette.
Does it get that bad?
So here's how it works: is that these AI models, for them to look realistic, okay, it's not so bad yet. For them to look realistic, they train them on the most realistic photos that are on the internet. And if you imagine what types of photos are on the internet in mass, it's very one-sided when it comes to realistic photography of women. So a lot of models have what a lot of I guess designers would consider an inherent level of horniness. So some models are hornier than other models because they were trained on essentially more porn than other models were trained on, which ironically, like, the reason that we get such nice dramatic lighting that looks so realistic on these owls is because it's coming from a model that's been trained on, all sorts of different content. But we're not seductive yet. We're getting there. This one actually is like more pineapple than owl. I kind of like this one.
It's cute. We have to take the rainbow back. We need to take the pineapples back. We need to take the pineapples
from the swingers.
Back.
Give them back. Give them back, you weird swingers. Give us our pineapples.
Just because I serve pineapple at my party does not mean that we are swingers, okay? Jeez.
All right, I'll crank the seductive part up on the owl, but I'm gonna spare you guys from any misfires.
I told you I had to tell my friend like that about the pineapple thing, and her wallet, it was like a really expensive wallet, and it had it on the wallet. I was like, you especially don't want it on your wallet. Like, you don't want it anywhere.
You just want to have a huge bumper sticker on the back of your minivan.
That's funny.
Okay, we got it. I know what we're doing here. I've done this enough times that I know how to make a seductive owl.
We've got a wow.
We're working wow, on it, guys.
The wows don't just pop right out. They gotta spend a little time cooking.
It's a world first wow making. It's a miracle in process.
And I've never seen a pineapple seductive owl before, so this will be new for everybody. I don't know if the internet's ever seen a seductive pineapple owl.
It's a world first wow.
You've seen it here. It got demonetized right here live in front of your own eyes.
I'm so excited. It's like an initiation.
All right, we're gonna have to wait. We're gonna have to cook another one. This one is not shareable.
Whoa.
I can show it just so you can see it, Bernie, without actually adding it to the stream. But you'll see what I mean, that it's not ready for prime time yet.
That's
Now
the
my
Rumble
imagination
Owl.
is like getting nasty.
You can find that at Paranoid American Patreon. The world's
I
first
can't
real
anymore. I
owl.
got my adult status removed so that I could come up in searches. And funny enough, I got dinged a couple weeks ago that was like, hey, out of these like 300 images that you uploaded, there's something naughty in here. And it was one of our live streams. And I'm pretty sure it was just like a picture of Jesus, but like you saw one of his nipples and they thought it was a boob. I don't know. It was their AI.
You get striked for Jesus AI nipple.
You absolutely do.
Nipples on the bat suit. Uh-oh.
I actually had, I believe, 3 out of my first 4 Instagram live streams all striked and taken down with claims of nudity. And it was
Congrats.
like, I don't know. It was weird. They're weird at Meta.
Wait, Bernie, how come Jeremy doesn't like Jeremy?
Oh, we will play that for the Bernie bonus at the end of Jeremy
Okay.
versus Jeremy, alien scientist and Jeremy Cowbell.
We were talking about orbs earlier and strange experiences. So when I was in Egypt in 2018, we were on the Nile cruise. It was March or April. I don't remember when we were on the tour. But we were going from Luxor to Aswan, or Aswan to Luxor. I think that was the direction we were going because we flew to Aswan. And we're all up on the upper patio. Some people are smoking cigarettes or drinking beer. I ordered a shisha. There with Brian Forrester and his wife Irene, and our whole crew. And we're just like looking out off the top of the boat over the Nile. And all of a sudden we hear what sounds like jet fighters, and we look up, and this orb, orange, goes whizzing by in the sky. And following it are 2 F-15.
Orb. You
It's like
say
orange, yeah. It's like orange.
Really?
Yeah. And following it are 2 F-15s. Because we give our old planes to Egypt and their Air Force. And then slightly behind that was a second orb that was just bobbing along. And so, yeah, it was very interesting because at the same time that this happened, I believe it was the same time in Washington State and Oregon, they scrambled the F-35s from Portland International Airport, where they have a lot of the F-35s sitting, toward Fort Lewis in Washington, chasing an orb. And so it's like almost the same depiction. And so I started thinking, are these ours? Is this drone tech? Is this AI drone tech? Are these put into play for testing purposes, so that we can train our pilots for quick maneuvers and
essentially what happened at the Nimitz encounters.
Right, yeah, exactly. And so that's always been my question: is this our terrestrial craft that can defy gravity because there's nobody in it?
Exactly, they're just drones, plasma drones.
Yeah, right. Or they create a plasma field.
Yeah, exactly.
I was at Nassim Harameyn's resonance project, and all these people brought their like Tesla devices to show off at the resonance convention. And one guy had this it was like a PVC octagonal structure, like scaffolding, and he had wrapped what is it, 8-inch copper wire around the whole thing, like spiraling around this octagonal shape. And the positive and the negative side of the wire, because the wire was wrapped intertwined, positive and negative, he attached to a 9-volt battery, and the thing levitated off the table, was spinning, and was shooting out magic light, basically, that white light, but it encompasses all light. And then when the battery wore out, it dropped back down to the table. It's just like, this was just copper wiring and a non-conductive scaffolding.
That's wild, and I think you actually just like jogged my memory hole of like a whole different bunch of like ghetto YouTube videos from like 10 or 15 years ago that used to be in like the anti-gravity YouTube video section, and then these
TT Brown video that shows this too. Yeah, it's interesting.
That.
Yeah, look those up. I'd love to gander them.
Jeremiah in the watching asking, have you seen the guys do the actual demonstration in person? You're there for that?
Yeah, no, I was there. That was there were like 10 different dudes that were at the event.
There we go.
There you go. Wow. This is the only appropriate one that came up. So there you go.
What a wow. Right? It's
there's seductive.
Those apricot pear at wow.
Pineapple.
So is the head on backward or are the feet on backward?
Yes.
What are we looking at here?
Of course, it's like zombie or something backwards. Yeah.
I mean, with a pineapple booty like that, it doesn't matter which way the feet are facing.
I guess not. I mean, but that's what throws the whole thing off is the feet. It's like, what the hell's going on there?
That's the part that throws you off. It's nothing else. It's just
nothing else. No, it's the feet.
Right, the backwards feet. There's always something distorted that's not quite there. Where it's like, okay,
I knew there was something off about that owl.
You gotta have a tell, though. Although, if you can't figure out that the owl's not photographed in nature, it was the world first metaverse wow.
That was the first.
National Geographic used to be the first porno magazine, so let's take naked pictures of indigenous people.
For science.
For science. Exactly. I'll leave it there.
All right, yes, and we're at the 2-hour mark. Where can we find? Well, Mr. Paranoid American, please do promote your products that I know you have sitting next to you, and then Hans as well with your book. But
I do. Right as we started, I was painting. These guys are still drying a little bit. They're cooking, but these are some Hillary Clinton action figures that I'm coming out with. They're all hand painted, hand airbrushed, life size, depending on how big you are and how big she is. But these are going to be coming out pretty soon on ParanoidAmerican.com. I've also got a whole bunch of other toy sets that I'm not going to. Well, I don't know. Do I have one? Here's a little test print that I was playing with before we started. This is the Super Predator play set with let's cover that word up.
Painted reptilian homunculi.
Such
Hillary.
a great gift.
Oh, what else? Oh, I'm not going to open and show you guys what's in here, but here's a preview of the homunculus kit that'll be coming out pretty soon, an exclusive from the One-on-One podcast. And speaking of One-on-One, you can go to chosenone.com. That's going to be where the latest issue of Chosen One #2 is going to be available. And even if you're listening to this way in the future, after the robot uprising, you should still be able to go to chosenone.com and get yourself a copy.
Most likely off of pirate radio somewhere. The chosenone.com. Right? When we get to post-apocalyptic world where oil rigs are, what we survive on. Unless the aliens come and save us and the Dropa return, Mr. Hans.
So yeah, you can find my work at megamist.com. It's short for Megalithic Mysteries. I have my book, the Dropa book, up there. I'm also working on my second book. I'll present it here if you want to.
Oh my god.
Throw me on the screen there, BurnEye. Oh, there you are. Entire screen. Yep. So this is my second book.
There we go. Sorry about that.
Which should be coming out soon. I'm almost done with it. I'm contemplating throwing in another chapter or two, but yeah. So my book on symbology and the magic of symbols, basically an introduction to esoteric and occult symbology that surrounds us every day, and some of the origins of where some of these symbols originate from, and gets into objects. It gets into logos and iconography. It gets into color theory. Gets into a lot of amazing things. Planet theory, Masonic theories about symbology, just like all over the map. And so yeah, I'm super proud of this work. So looking forward to getting it out. And yeah. Anyway, that's both of my stuff. A lot of videos on megamist.com, as well as my clothing line. A lot of it's stuff that I've done from my travels to Egypt and Peru, just redrawings and stuff that I've touched up, because I do all things graphic design and multimedia. So from Photoshop work to Illustrator to everything. Anyway, that's where you can find me.
Much appreciated, brother. Julia, where can people follow you? And
you can come. I have a YouTube channel now, Julia Kamen, and my website is juliakamen.com. And if you want a hypnosis regression session, email me. And if you want me to do your astrology a birth chart analysis by Julia, email me, julia@juliakamen.com. And it's going to be interesting, especially this year with all the energies that are coming. And like, it's going to help to know who you are, things about you, things, it's going to
transcend to the 5D light body in 2024. And there'll be much more of this, and getting in depth, and hopefully we all reach your Christ consciousness and learn to fly in your dreams. All right. Any last words? No? We're good?
You are powerful. Don't forget how powerful you are.
Thanks for having us on, Bernie.
Much love. Sorry for the delay. That's awesome.